Good morning to you. Welcome back. You are still watching Morning Live, taking a look at your sport news in this hour. Well, Dricus du Plessis managed to retain his UFC middleweight title after beating challenger Israel Adesanya in Perth. Now, the night started on the right turn for du Plessis as Springboks Captain Siya Kolisi and lock Eben Etzebeth walked out with him, accompanied by the South African national anthem, as he made his way to the octagon for the fight. Now, to talk about this moment of pride for the South African nation, whose currency in world sports seems to be on the rise, we are now joined by Shana, Power, known to many in the MMA circles as Titanium. She is, of course, an MMA fighter as well as coach. Hey, good morning to you, Shana. Thank you so much for joining us once again on Sports on Morning Live.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure. Let's start our conversation and just touch on how it seems like on the night, Dricus' plan worked out perfectly the way he wanted it to. But I also just want to highlight how much closer the fight was initially in comparison to what people thought it would be, given how Israel had done against Strickland in what was a horrendous performance for him.
Yeah, it was. It was a super tight fight. But if you just listen to Dricus afterwards, he wanted to prove that he's an all-round, well-rounded fighter, that he could stand with the best, And he took Izzy on, standing up, and it was a really, really close fight. The scorecards have been released, and Dricus was actually winning before he submitted Izzy. But yeah, it was an incredible performance. Dricus just showed that he has it all. He's the full package. He can stand, he can wrestle, and he can grapple. It was incredible to watch.
It was incredible to watch, and perhaps as you just speak to me about how close it was, what do you think of how Izzy came out on the night, given all the big talk and all the hype around him and what he was saying ahead of the clash? What do you make of his performance?
Yeah, Izzy's performance was great. I mean, on his feet, he looked sharp. He was landing a lot of fights. He looked like he was well conditioned. He didn't look that tired. His combos were landing. I think Izzy was performing quite well. He's a really, really awesome athlete to watch from a stand-up point. So his hips, he's got one of the strongest hips. For Dricus to be able to take him down was also an amazing thing to see, because Izzy really is hard to take down. So Izzy was looking really, really sharp. But yeah, I mean, he couldn't, that consistency, that pressure from Dricus, it was just too much for Izzy to handle. And that's exactly what Dricus says, he keeps that consistent pressure. He's in it for all 5 rounds. You've got to be prepared. But Izzy looked good. I mean, I don't know if it was a mistake, because like I said on Friday, Dricus's grappling is far superior. And if it went to the ground, we knew it was going to be, Dricus's fight. And that's exactly what happened.
Indeed, and you talk about that consistency, but perhaps we just delve a little bit deeper into that, because many say Dricus is an awkward fighter, and sometimes in that awkwardness one overlooks and doesn't think so much about how he's able to quickly adapt in any situation that he finds himself in while in a fight. Because if you look in the third round that you speak about, Israel was looking like he was the more energetic fighter between the two, but then Dricus ended up with Israel in his grip. Now talk to me about that difficulty of a seasoned fighter like Israel finding himself in a lock like that.
Yeah, I mean, in that round, Dricus was. I'm not sure. I mean, Dricus was looking a little bit, if you want to use the word, flatter than Izzy in that moment, and Izzy was landing successful punches, and you weren't sure what was going to happen. Like I said on Friday, it was definitely a 50-50 fight on the stand-up. And, Dricus has heart, and he didn't give up. So that pressure, I think, over time was wearing Izzy down, and Dricus ended up connecting some solid punches just before he took Izzy down. And, he got on the back, and he managed to finish Izzy. I think when you rock like that and trying to get out of a defense or a rear naked choke and you're not sure what's happening, he must have made a mistake, like he says. But I just, again, think Dricus is a much better grappler than Izzy. And Dricus's heart, he doesn't give up. And that's exactly what happened on Sunday morning. He just kept at it, and it showed. I mean, he's the world champion. It's incredible.
The heart of a South African, one that never gives up no matter what. Shana, I want to touch on, just before we focus more on Dricus, on Izzy now, because this is a man that has suffered 2 big losses. It's Strickland and now it's Dricus. He's 35 years old. What do you see happening next for an Izzy? Because when I spoke to you on Friday, you said he doesn't seem to be a man that wants to slow down, and we heard him at the end of the fight saying he will still continue to fight for his family. What do you see coming up next for Izzy?
Sure. He says he doesn't want to slow down. I think he handled this loss a bit better. I think he was also quite impressed with his performance. Like I said, if you just take the emotion out of it and you look at it from a fighter's point of view, Izzy did really look good this fight. So I don't think that there were any areas where you would say, Izzy should retire, he should give up. I don't know who his next opponent would be, but, if you look at the press conference and what he was saying, he's not really chasing anything. He's happy to see who UFC puts in front of him. I think he's happy to go back to the drawing board, but he's also not adamant on a title rematch, or, he's not chasing it. I think he's just wanting to enjoy being a fighter, going back, and he just loves the sport. So I can't tell you who I think would be next for Izzy, but, he didn't retire. He's adamant he's not retiring. And I don't think he needs to, because like I said, his performance on Sunday morning wasn't of anyone that needs to, hang up their gloves.
Indeed. Let's talk about the emotion before the fight. There was a lot of emotion. There was a lot being said. But after that fight, it was nice to see the beautiful moment between the 2 fighters. I mean, we saw Dricus having moments with Israel's parents backstage and them handing over their plaudits to each other. How was that moment for you sitting at home watching? I mean, we also saw Dricus apologizing to Israel and saying, perhaps you misinterpreted what I said, but at no point did I mean any disrespect for you. This must be big for the sport.
It is, to have that sportsmanship and to put your differences aside in that moment. At the end of the day, you take all politics, everything out. It was a fight, and Dricus was the better fighter on the night. Going into a fight, there's obviously a lot of hype, a lot of talk. I do feel, leading up to this fight, that it was misconstrued, and I think they did take what Dricus was saying out of context. He is the only South African that lives in South Africa, trains from South Africa, is Camp South Africa. To be, classed a South African champ, if you want to say that, that doesn't take away anything that Izzy has done for the sport, and not questioning his Africanness. So I think, for Dricus to be humble in victory and defeat, it just shows what kind of athlete it is, and it just makes us as South Africans super proud that is the person that's representing us.
And as I say goodbye to you, Shana, Dricus's next fight, should it be in South Africa, and who should he take on?
Absolutely. I mean, I think South Africans have been waiting for this moment. So I really, really hope Dana sticks to it. He said he would if Dricus beat Izzy, so he did. So UFC, please bring the UFC fights to South Africa so we can support Dricus. Next in line, according to them, is Sean Strickland, a rematch. So, I think that's super exciting, and I definitely will be one of the people at that fight, should it be in South Africa.
We'll all be watching. Strickland has had a lot to say out in the X streets, but Shana, thank you so much for your time once again this morning.
Thank you.
That is Shana Adrian Power, known to many as Titanium in the MMA circles. She is an MMA fighter as well as coach. And that's the note in which we'll wrap up your sport news in this hour. Once again, a massive congratulations to South Africa's champion, Dricus du Plessis.